We were walking side by side, heading toward a cafe where her friends were already waiting. I thought it was just another evening, one of those nights where I could blend into her world and maybe, just maybe, feel like I belonged there. I reached out, gently brushing my hand against her arm, a simple gesture of closeness. But instead of leaning in, she jerked away as if my touch burned her skin. Her eyes cut into me like knives, sharp and unrelenting, and she hissed under her breath but loud enough for others to hear, "Don't walk with me. You'll embarrass me in front of my friends." The words stopped me cold. My heart slammed against my ribs. People nearby turned to look, strangers catching a glimpse of a private humiliation made painfully public. I froze, stuck between defending myself or pretending it didn't matter. My lips curled into a forced smile, the kind you wear to keep from shattering in plain sight. She didn't wait for me. She strutted ahead with her head high, a smug curve playing on her mouth, as though belittling me was a victory worth savoring. From where I stood, I could hear the faint laughter of her friends greeting her, as if I was nothing more than an awkward shadow trailing behind. That was the moment I realized something had broken. But that wasn't the first time she treated me like dirt. It was just the first time she didn't care who saw it. I've never been the loudest guy in the room. I'm not the one cracking jokes to win attention or showing off to prove a point. I've always believed in something simple: work hard, stay loyal, and treat the people you love with respect. That's how I was raised, and that's how I thought love was supposed to be. When I met her, it felt like lightning in a bottle. She had this way of making me feel seen, like she could peel back the layers of who I was and accept me fully. Our first dates were the kind of memories you replay when you're alone at night, walking by the river, laughing until our cheeks hurt, staying up until sunrise talking about our dreams. For a while, I thought I had found my forever. But looking back, there were cracks forming early. She'd make little comments, jokes about my clothes not being stylish enough, my car not being flashy enough, my quiet personality being a bit boring. They were subtle, brushed off with a laugh, but they stung. I told myself love meant patience. Love meant proving her wrong by showing up, by being consistent, by giving her the loyalty no one else ever had. I skipped nights out with my friends because she wanted me all to herself. I saved money to surprise her with dinners and trips, only for her to nitpick the details. I carried her burdens without complaint, hoping one day she'd notice the weight I bore in silence. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. And yet I stayed, because I thought that's what you do when you love someone. You hold on tighter when they start to slip away. I thought her little comments were harmless, but then came the nights where she stopped coming home. At first, the comments were small, the kind you could almost laugh off. She'd tease me in front of her friends, saying things like, "He's sweet, but honestly, he's kind of boring." They would laugh, and I'd force a smile, telling myself it was just a joke. But over time, the jokes turned sharper, cutting deeper. One night at a party, when I tried to join in a conversation, she rolled her eyes and muttered, "God, you're so clingy." Everyone heard it. I swallowed the humiliation, standing there like a fool while she walked away to bask in their laughter. The dismissals became routine. If I tried to hold her hand in public, she'd pull away, as if my touch lowered her value. Introductions were brutal. "This is just my boyfriend," she'd say with a shrug, like I was an afterthought, a placeholder until someone better came along. I started to notice her phone always tilted away, her screen brightness low. Late nights at the library or group study sessions turned into mornings when she'd stumble in with smeared makeup and a vague excuse about losing track of time. When I asked questions, hoping for reassurance, I got venom. "You're paranoid," she'd snap. "Why don't you trust me? Maybe if you weren't so insecure, we wouldn't have these problems." I began doubting myself, wondering if maybe she was right. But then she'd twist the knife further, praising other men in front of me, going on about how ambitious her coworker was, how confident her friend's boyfriend seemed. And then came the jabs at me. "Why don't you push yourself harder? Maybe then you'd actually get somewhere in life." I tried to hold it together, telling myself she was stressed, that maybe I wasn't giving her enough. But every small betrayal stacked higher until it became impossible to ignore. The worst was my birthday. I had saved up for weeks to host a quiet dinner with her and a few close friends. I thought maybe, for once, she'd see how much I cared. Instead, she spent the night openly flirting with a guy at the table, laughing too loudly at his jokes, brushing her hand against his arm while I sat there, invisible. My friends noticed. The silence at the table grew heavy, and I felt my face burning while she carried on as if I didn't even exist. That night, something cracked inside me. I couldn't unsee it, couldn't keep pretending that the love I thought we had was still there. I went home staring at the ceiling, asking myself over and over, How much more could I take before I finally broke? But nothing compared to the night I caught her red-handed and realized the woman I loved had no respect left for me at all. It was late on a Thursday night when I decided I couldn't take the silence anymore. She hadn't answered my texts all evening, and something inside me, call it instinct, call it the last shred of self-respect, pushed me to drive over to her place unannounced. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached, but I told myself maybe she'd just fallen asleep. Maybe I was overthinking again. When I walked up the stairs, I could hear music faintly playing behind her door. Laughter. A man's laughter. My chest tightened. I knocked once, twice, then slowly turned the knob. She hadn't even bothered to lock it. There she was, sitting on the couch with another guy, leaning in so close their faces nearly touched. His hand rested comfortably on her knee, like it had been there many times before. She saw me before he did, and instead of shock or guilt, she smiled, as if catching me in this scene was amusing. I froze. My mind raced through every sacrifice, every humiliation, every time I had convinced myself to stay. I remembered the nights I skipped out on my friends because she wanted me home, the hours I spent saving money for gifts she dismissed as cheap, the insults disguised as jokes, the eye rolls, the gaslighting. It all crashed down at once, and I stood there, drowning in it. Finally, the guy turned, startled. Who's this?" he asked, his hand slipping away from her knee. She leaned back casually, crossing her arms. "Don't worry about him," she said with a smirk. Then her eyes locked on mine, and she delivered the line that shattered me. "Why do you care? You'll never be enough for me anyway." It was like my chest split open. Every part of me wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand an explanation. But instead, I felt a strange calm wash over me, the kind of calm that comes when you realize the fight is already over. I took a breath, my voice steady. "I deserved better than this." Her smirk faltered for the first time that night. She wanted me to rage, to beg, to crumble so she could feel powerful. But my calmness robbed her of that victory. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw tightened. I turned toward the door, my footsteps heavy but deliberate. She called after me, her voice sharp and venomous. "You'll always be nothing without me." The words echoed in the hallway as I walked away, each syllable burning into my memory. And yet, deep down, I knew she was wrong. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't the one embarrassed. She was. I thought leaving her would be the end, but the real drama began once everyone else found out. The morning after I walked out, my phone lit up like a wildfire. First, it was her friends. They flooded social media with cheap shots, parroting her lies. He was obsessed with her, controlling and insecure. They painted me as the villain, the sad boyfriend who couldn't handle a strong woman. For a while, I almost believed them, almost. But then the cracks began to show. Screenshots started circulating, texts she had sent to other guys, her late-night study sessions, suddenly exposed for what they really were. People who had stayed quiet before came forward. Classmates, co-workers, even strangers at parties. They told stories of seeing her draped over other men while I was none the wiser. Her polished image crumbled fast. That's when the tide shifted. Friends I thought I'd lost reached out. My cousin called and said, "Man, you didn't deserve that." She was toxic from day one. Even people at work, who never got involved in anyone's personal business, came up to me quietly. "I heard what happened. Honestly, you're better off without her." For the first time, I didn't feel crazy. I felt seen. It was like watching a courtroom of public opinion turn on her. And in this digital age, judgment comes fast. Imagined Reddit-style commentary played in my head, echoing everything I'd wish someone would say while I was stuck in that relationship. Classic narcissist behavior. "Bro, you dodged a bullet. She'll regret losing you the second she realizes nobody else will put up with her." I scrolled through message after message, not all from friends, some from acquaintances who barely knew me but had seen enough of her to understand. And with every word of validation, I felt lighter, vindicated. For months, I had carried the weight of her lies, convinced I was the problem. But now the truth was out, and everyone could see her for who she really was. Still, when the chaos finally quieted down, I was left with a silence I couldn't ignore. The lies were gone, the masks stripped away, but one question haunted me every time I tried to sleep. But after all the chaos, I had to face the hardest question of all. Who was I without her? The first nights alone were the hardest. The silence in my apartment felt like it was pressing down on me, louder than any argument we'd ever had. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words, wondering if maybe she had been right all along, if maybe I really wasn't enough. But as the days stretched into weeks, something inside me began to shift. I started reaching out to the people I'd neglected. Friends who had stopped inviting me out because I always chose her. Family who'd quietly worried but never pushed too hard. Little by little, I rebuilt those connections. And for the first time in a long time, I felt real laughter, the kind that doesn't come with judgment or strings attached. The weight I'd carried for so long began to lift. I realized that love should never feel like constant humiliation, never feel like you're begging for scraps of respect. Loyalty means nothing if it's one-sided. Patience doesn't mean swallowing disrespect. And sacrifice isn't love when it's demanded, not appreciated. Instead of hating her, I chose something different. Gratitude. Gratitude that she revealed her true self before I wasted even more years. Gratitude that she showed me exactly what I will never settle for again. Now, when I think of her, it isn't with pain. It's with clarity. I know who I am, and I know what I deserve. And if sharing my story helps even one person walk away from the wrong person sooner, then all of it has meaning. Respect yourself enough to walk away from anyone who treats you as less than you are. Loyalty means nothing without respect. She said I'd embarrass her, but in the end, she embarrassed herself, and I walked away with my dignity intact.